Hello, it's 10 a.m. here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. There are 4 reforms that President Yoon says must be realized for the livelihoods of the people. There are pension reform, labor reform, education reform, and healthcare reform. President Yoon may once again reiterate his vow to complete the reforms in a moment, and that is why we are breaking into our regular programming to bring you live coverage of his remarks. Now, in the 46th cabinet meeting that will soon begin, President Yoon could also order related officials to closely monitor and manage possible economic risks like the impact on the domestic crude oil supply that could stem from the war in the Middle East. And today, October 29th, also marks the Local Autonomy Day here in South Korea. It's a day established to recognize and promote democracy and the efficiency of local autonomous administration. It's also a day to ensure balanced development of local areas, which is in line with what the Yoon administration has been carrying out policy discussion with citizens. It's been traveling across the country so that every region, and not just the metropolitan area, sees the growth and development that it deserves. The discussions are special in that they also allow citizens of all ages and social brackets to pitch in when it comes to government policy making. This weekend also marks the 2nd anniversary of the Itaewon crowd crush, a tragic incident that took 159 lives, mostly young adults, during Halloween celebrations on October 29th back in 2022. He may also make note of that awful tragedy. Now, President Yoon could also take his time to address North Korea's deployment of soldiers to Russia. In fact, Seoul and Washington have confirmed that the North has sent at least 10,000 troops to Russia to fight in Ukraine. Now, NATO also warns that those soldiers could quickly advance to the front lines of the biggest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. President Yoon has especially keen to look after people's livelihoods, which is why he's been stressing the importance and desperate need for major reforms in 4 areas. And just yesterday on Monday, the South Korean leader once again ordered related ministries and officials to speed up so that those reforms are swiftly implemented with tangible outcomes. We are still waiting for the 46th cabinet meeting of the year to begin. Here, President Yoon is about to stress the importance of implementing 4 major reforms. He's about to deliver his remarks. We'll come back afterwards.
Let us begin the cabinet meeting. Well, this year we have already approached to the near end, and November is just around the corner. For the remaining 2 months, the government, first and foremost, will put all our efforts into the promotion of 4 major reform tasks. They are medical, pension, labor, and education reforms, the 4 major reforms, and this is equal to people's livelihood. In order to foster creative future human resources and ensure a work-life balance within stable labor management relations, and create a country where people can receive high-quality medical benefits and live without worrying about their after-retirement days. And this is the 4 major reforms of our government. The structural reform of the entire society, if this is not done, then the livelihood will not be there, and the future of the country is not there. And the success or failure of the reform lies in the hands of the public officials. In the next 2 months, we must thoroughly review the progress of the 4 major reforms and devote all our efforts into achieving the results. The most imminent task is medical reform. So we are just preparing for the coming winter, and we have to maintain the medical system without any gaps so that there's no disruption in patient treatment. Respiratory diseases like COVID-19 and cardiovascular diseases in the elderly are especially vulnerable diseases that happen frequently in the winter cold weathers. So in order to prevent the public from becoming anxious, we have to prepare thoroughly the emergency system. And the support project for restructuring high-level general hospitals, let us accelerate this. And as of yesterday, I understand that 18 high-level general hospitals, including Asan Medical Center, applied. We need more hospitals to join this rank and the medical reform within this year and root out the practice of excessively relying on the junior doctors. We have to make every effort to ensure that high-level general hospitals can be reborn as these intensive care-centered hospitals. The non-payment and the insurance reform should also be sped up. And for this medical reform, the government plans to invest a total of 30 trillion won, combining national budget and health insurance. However, if such non-payment and the insurance are not in harmony with the public insurance, then the efforts will go in vain. So I hope that the chairman of the Financial Service Commission and the Minister of Health and Welfare prepare a plan to improve the insurance system and build a system of coexistence. I also hope that the measures for the legal risks of medical accidents that have caused doctors engaged in essential medical care to leave will be prepared as quickly as possible. We have to promote areas that can be implemented immediately, such as improving the investigation procedure so that it could be felt by the people, and make efforts so that the Medical Accident Special Act, along with other reasonable dispute resolution system, be discussed sufficiently in the National Assembly. Pension reform is a major livelihood issue, and the government is putting its efforts and has proposed a single pension reform plan for the first time in 21 years. So I hope the National Assembly will quickly establish a structure to discuss and conduct in-depth discussions so that we can see a visible progress. The government will also be active in the participation. Labor reform cannot be delayed any further. As a result of consistently establishing labor management law since the launch of our government, the field has become more stable. And based on this, we must now start and spur the structural reform that expand job opportunities for the people. Jobs are the first and foremost priority for the people. We must make the labor system flexible so that workers and companies can freely choose various working hours and work methods so that they will create sustainable jobs. I hope that we actively engage in social dialogue, including discussions at the Economic and Social Welfare Committee, and come up with the best solution. In addition, in order to protect the vulnerable in the labor area, the Labor Weakness Protection, Vulnerable Protection Act and Fair Employment Act have to be discussed in the National Assembly. Educational reform should create real results centered on core tasks so that we can experience a different system from next year. By integrated standards for teachers, qualification and etc. This will be finalized by the end of this year. And the Nilbom School, which is currently operating in all first grade elementary schools nationwide, will be spread and will be prepared thoroughly so that it can be expanded to second grade from next year. And we should thoroughly prepare teachers, training, and internet networks so that the AI digital textbooks will be introduced for the first time next year and take root in the field. Even before the release of AI digital textbook at the end of November, we can use promotional videos so that the public can experience what it is in advance. In addition, the RISE system, which supports universities to cultivate permanent talent and grow together with the region, this will be expanded to 17 cities nationwide next year. And 2.2 trillion won in funds will be transferred to local governments and invested in universities. The Ministry of Education should do its utmost for that this could be implemented thoroughly. The four major reforms are national tasks that cannot be accomplished with the efforts of just few ministries. All the members of the cabinet should take active cooperation. And today is the day of local autonomy and balanced development day. The 9th Constitutional Amendment in 1987 and in 1995 national simultaneous local elections, and taking that the local autonomy system had restarted, and we are celebrating 30th year next year. We must further develop the local autonomy system to improve the quality of life in residents and achieve balanced development. Our government is a locally balanced government. The core principle of state affairs is to open a local era where regional balanced development and the regional areas are good places to live. And with the enactment of the Local Decentralization and Balanced Development Act, and the Local Era Committee was launched to lead such efforts. The government is introducing the 4 special zones to the local era to overcome the crisis of local extinction, and is focusing on attracting large-scale investments to these areas. We have led the agreement on the administration integration of Daegu and Gyeongbuk to overcome the one-party system of the metropolitan area, and our government has also achieved the launch of 2 special autonomous provinces of Gangwon and Jeonbu. In the future, the government will continue to make every effort to strengthen regional competitiveness and enable each region to develop by taking advantage of its characteristics. The era of central government unilaterally deciding and distributing things to the region is over now, and it is the era where each local governments develop their own strategy by utilizing their advantages. The shift of the center gravity to the local governments will be done in a more bold manner, and the central government will become a strong supporter of the success for local governments. The power of autonomy can work properly when authority and responsibility are balanced. I hope that the cabinet members will also think about how to establish a system that have more authority and to give more authority to local governments while taking the responsibility for it as well. In 2021, one man in his 20s was taking care of his ill father and eventually gave up his life. And this was a tragic incident that we all remember. With this incident, the social interest had increased for the youths who have the burden to take care of their family. However, we still have many young people who are taking care of their families. According to a recent survey, in the metropolitan area, there are about 70,000 youths who are bearing the burden of taking care of their family. And trapped in this vicious cycle of poverty, they are unable to think about having work or studying, and neglecting those in need does not conform to the values of freedom pursued by our government. This year, the government launched a pilot project to provide one-on-one support for such youths in difficulties, but many young people are still not using it because the promotion was not up to sufficient level. We need to work harder to identify target groups in cooperation with schools, hospitals, and private organizations. We need to expand customized support to the entire lives of family-caring youths, including not only basic areas, but also scholarships, jobs, and psychological counseling and housing. I hope that related ministries centered around Ministry of Health and Welfare will cooperate to take more care. I also ask the public to lend a helping hand so that these young people around them do not fall behind in society. The economic growth rate in third quarter was 0.1% higher than the second quarter and 1.5% higher than the third quarter of last year, but it is falling short of the original expectations. Nevertheless, the demand is picking up, which is encouraging news centered on facility investment and consumption. The sluggish sectors, such as construction investment, should have more supplementary measures, and I hope the policy efforts should take place so that the government recovery momentum can spread to every corner of the society. In addition, concerns about external uncertainty are greater than ever. The U.S. presidential election is just next week coming up, and tensions in the Middle East are rising after Israel attacked Iran last weekend. We must respond promptly so that supply chains, oil prices, and exchange rates do not have a negative impact on our economy. The Ukraine war continues for the third year, and amidst this, North Korea has gone beyond providing weapons to Russia and now dispatched troops. The illegal military collusion between Russia and North Korea is a serious matter that poses a grave security threat to the international community and pose a threat to our security. We must thoroughly examine all possibilities and prepare the countermeasures. I hope everyone will remain alert and more vigilant and manage risks. Today marks the second anniversary of the Itaewon tragedy. I pray for the souls of those who have sadly passed away and also offer my deepest condolences to the bereaved families who are living in sorrow. Protecting the daily lives of the people and creating a safe society is a true way to mourn the victims. I ask the relevant ministries to do their utmost in inspecting and supplementing the multi-safety system, including crowd management.
That was the 46th Cabinet meeting of the year. We'll bring you the highlights at our later newscast at 5 p.m. Korea time. Now, in the meantime, let's turn to stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korea, the U.S. and NATO on Monday expressed concerns as officials revealed North Korean troops have already been deployed to Russia's front lines. In fact, at a faster pace than expected. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea and the United States say North Korea has sent at least 10,000 troops to Russia to fight in Ukraine, as NATO also warns the soldiers could quickly advance to the front lines of the biggest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. On Monday, Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh said Pyongyang has sent about 10,000 troops to Russia to train and fight in Ukraine within the next several weeks, a significantly higher number than the 3,000 estimated by the White House last week. Singh said some North Korean troops have already moved closer to Ukraine, appearing to head for the Kursk border region where Russian forces have struggled to push back against the Ukrainian incursion. She also said if the troops enter combat, there would be no limits on the use of US-provided weapons. The spokesperson's remarks came just hours after NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte confirmed that some North Korean units were already in the Kursk region, deeming the development a significant escalation. Rutte had been briefed by a South Korean delegation of military and intelligence officials in Brussels, who said the deployment of North Korean soldiers has been speeding up. With Kim Yong-bok, a high-ranking army official close to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, also sent to Russia. The first deputy director of Seoul's National Intelligence Service, Hong Jang-won, said since the disclosure of North Korea and Russia's military cooperation, it appears the two sides are working impatiently to move an estimated 12,000 troops, with some already dispatched to the Kursk region. President Yoon Suk-yeol on Monday held a phone call with the NATO Secretary-General, saying he hopes NATO will increase its solidarity with Seoul and increase efforts to monitor and block illegal exchanges between Pyongyang and Moscow. Rutte thanked the South Korean leader for swiftly sending a delegation of military intelligence officials to brief NATO member states on the situation and expressed hope to keep sharing battlefield-related information and coordinate response measures. Yoon also talked on the phone with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, warning North Korean troops could move to the front lines at a swifter pace than anticipated. He called for the immediate withdrawal of North Korean troops and an end to the collaboration between Pyongyang and the Kremlin, warning that South Korea would actively implement countermeasures. Meanwhile, Russia has neither directly confirmed nor denied that it is hosting North Korean soldiers, but said it is up to Moscow and Pyongyang on how they implement their new security treaty reached in June. The US Pentagon says the North Korea-Russia axis is likely to be discussed when South Korean Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun meets his US counterpart Lloyd Austin on Wednesday in Washington, D.C. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Biden administration has issued rules to limit U.S. investors' funding projects that could help China to develop advanced technology. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
The U.S. Treasury Department finalized its rules on Monday to restrict American investments in China in advanced technology such as semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. The rules are designed to implement President Joe Biden's executive order signed in August last year, addressing United States investments in certain national security technologies and products in countries of concern. The country of concern identified in the order is China and the special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. To be specific, the regulations prohibit U.S. financing of some ventures, and it requires Americans and companies in the U.S. to notify the government of transactions that involve technologies and products that may contribute to a threat to the national security of the United States. The rules will take effect starting January 2nd. The rules aim to prevent China from enjoying intangible benefits that are believed to come with the U.S. financial support, including enhanced standing and prominence, managerial assistance, investment and talent networks, and market access. Noting that advanced technologies are fundamental to the development of the next generation of military, surveillance, intelligence, and certain cybersecurity applications, Assistant Secretary for Investment Security Paul Rosen said the Biden-Harris administration is committed to keeping them out of the hands of those who may use them to threaten U.S. security. The Treasury is setting up a global transactions office to oversee the new rule, and violators will be fined up to around $368,000 US, or twice the value of the prohibited transaction, whichever is greater. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The snap election in Japan is looking to have a profound impact on Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's ruling coalition after losing its parliamentary majority. Our Park Gon explains what this could mean for Japan and its relationship with South Korea.
In a key parliament election held Sunday, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's ruling coalition lost the majority of seats it previously had. That's the first time in 15 years the Liberal Democratic Party and its junior coalition partner party, Komeito, have lost the majority after briefly losing power in 2009. The coalition earned just 215 seats out of 465 in Japan's lower house, 18 short of the 233 seats needed for a majority. Its extensive financial scandal in late 2023 and increasing living costs are major factors behind falling public support. While especially attacking the ruling party with the money scandal, the main opposition Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan gained a significant number of seats, going from 98 to 148. The leader of the main opposition party, Yoshihiko Noda, said the loss by the LDP-Komeito coalition was a huge achievement, saying the country is on the eve of a change of government. Concerns of political uncertainties are rising after Ishiba gambled on calling a snap election to bolster his position as soon as being freshly minted as prime minister this month.
Based on what I see now, it's quite a tough situation. I'm in the party where I cannot ignore those who don't agree with what I say. In trying to manage these dynamics, I feel I've lost my sense of self.
Pundits say the administration may struggle to form a government, and also say that Ishiba's position is in jeopardy unless he brings the cabinet popularity back up in time for the House of Councillors election held in July next year. In order to remain in power, the LDP could try to bring other parties to its coalition, or simply try to rule through a minority government and focus on domestic issues. Pundits also predict that due to the election outcome, the ruling party will not be able to make bold decisions easily related to improving relationships with South Korea. Park Gon, Arirang News.
We are 1 week out from the U.S. presidential election. What do polls indicate, and what are the two candidates up to during the final full week ahead of the big day? Let's turn to VOA correspondent Jessica Stone. Welcome back.
Good to see you.
So, Jessica, in what appears to, what experts say will be one of the tightest races in U.S. history, who's leading the latest polls?
Yeah, this is a fascinating example of why national polls are reflecting one set of values and state-by-state polls in the battleground states are reflecting something else. The latest polls released on Monday in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, which are all battleground states that will decide the election, have Trump up by just 1 point, but that's within the margin of error. Now, on Sunday, we had an Arizona poll put Trump ahead by 2 points. Again, this is within the margin of error, so razor-thin margins. But two national polls released Sunday show Harris up by 1 to 4 points. And so often at VOA, when we talk about U.S. elections, we have to remember to explain that this system is not winner take all, and it is not a popular vote that will elect the U.S. president. It is a 270 electoral college votes that will elect the next U.S. president. And that means it's going to come down to what happens, who turns out, and how close the margins are in about 7 states in the United States.
Right, and you have to walk us through the two candidates' biggest selling points. I mean, what strategies are Trump and Harris really, pushing for?
Well, a recent NBC-CNBC poll shows that Trump has actually pulled ahead of Harris by just a couple of points in terms of popularity. Now, both of these candidates are really low popularity overall, which analysts say shows that people really don't like either choice entirely. But they are seeing this change from the height of right after Harris announced her candidacy, this change. On the issues, we're seeing polling data, Americans giving Harris more credit for being strong on abortion rights, climate change, and healthcare. So she is driving those points home as she goes to the battleground states. They give Trump more credit for managing the economy and immigration. But according to Gallup polling, the economy is the #1 issue for American voters.
Well, in the meantime, Trump, continues to attack Harris. And hasn't Harris also, been targeting her opponent with, jibes over his age and competence? We have to talk about that.
Absolutely. And she has called him a fascist. She has called him unhinged, unstable. And we're seeing definitely her take a more negative turn. Gone is the joy and the good vibes of the early Harris campaign. Now we really have both of these candidates accusing each other of things, calling each other names. That Trump rally in Madison Square Garden over the weekend in New York City initially started, for example, with the closing message. Kamala broke it. I'm going to fix it. Then it really got unfocused. There's been a lot of criticism here in the news cycle in the United States in the last 24 hours because there were so many popular surrogates there. There were a lot of racially charged remarks, and there's been a lot of criticism, including Republicans stepping away from some of the remarks that were made during that very long campaign event. And there were particularly some jabs at Hispanics, which is important for the political reason that Hispanics are going to be part of the electorate that's going to make those critical decisions in those critical 6 or 7 states. And that's what the Harris campaign pointed out, that she was with Puerto Ricans, for example, at the same time or just ahead of the remarks that were made at the Trump rally. So yes, a lot of mudslinging going on in these final days. But remember, early voting is always going to be a factor here. The message may be too late for some of these voters. There are so many people early voting that they may already have cast their ballots by the time they get these closing arguments.
That's a good point. Now, in the meantime, rain is in the forecast for Election Day, with some experts saying extreme weather can disrupt the election. Is that so? How does that work?
Yeah, it really depends on where in the country. I mean, we're seeing, and again, we're 8 days out, so these forecasts may in fact not occur. But 8 days out, we're seeing rain forecasts for the middle of the country. This is a part of the country where people in the swing states of Michigan and Wisconsin in particular, they're used to rain, they're used to cold. But there is research that indicates that it could also keep people more broadly home from the polls. That research is not state specific. There's a University of Copenhagen political science professor who showed that marginal voters are the kinds of voters that would maybe choose to stay home with bad weather. And a Princeton study shows that about less than 1% or so of the voters he surveyed show that. So we're really talking about small groups of people. But the reason it's important to point out, and I'm glad you raised it, is because small groups of people may well swing this election in one direction or another.
Well, there's a verbal attacking between the two and maybe bad weather on the way. But what are some of the key points that experts say voters should be really mindful of?
I think the biggest question at this point, 8 days out, is will we have an election result on Election Day? And it increasingly looks unlikely that we will, right? Because all of these critical battleground states, they begin counting the ballots at different times. For example, we have states like Michigan, all of Arizona, North Carolina, Nevada. They've already started counting the vote. But in Georgia and Pennsylvania, they don't start counting until Election Day. So we could see this sort of ripple effect where you've got the early votes and the day of votes coming in, being counted at different times. And it's very possible that if there's an influx of early votes to count, they may not make their deadlines. They may need extensions. Remember, 4 years ago, we saw some states not have a result for 4 to 6 days. That could certainly happen again with this influx of early votes, which I should point out is not as high as it was 4 years ago. Those were COVID-induced, steps that people took to be extra careful. We're not seeing the same rates of early voting, but we're actually seeing the opposite trend where we see more Republicans early voting. That just means we can't count on those early votes to be a predictor of the ultimate winner. We have to wait till every vote is counted. That's how close it's going to be.
We do have 1 more week to go. All right, Jessica, thanks so much for the report. As always, we appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
BLACKPINK'S Rosé and Bruno Mars collaboration APT on Monday debuted at number 8 on Billboard's Hot 100, the main single chart. That makes Rosé the highest listed female K-pop artist ever on Billboard. BLACKPINK hit 13th place on the Hot 100 chart in 2020 with their song Ice Cream, a song released with Selena Gomez. APT entered the UK's official singles chart top 100 in the 4th position. The Gia Tigers won their 12th Korean Series title on Monday, defeating the Samsung Lions in Game 5. They overcame a 5-1 deficit to win their first title since 2017. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
Going into Game 5 of the 2024 Korean Series on Monday, The Kia Tigers had never lost a championship series, with 11 out of 11 previous Korean Series appearances ending in victory. After Monday night's game, Kia made it 12 for 12. Down 5-1 at one point in the game, the Tigers stormed back to beat the Samsung Lions 7-5 to win their first KBO League title since 2017. What made Monday's win even more special was that the Tigers were able to clinch the title in front of a sold-out home crowd for only the second time in their 12 championship wins. The Gwangju-based team now becomes the first professional baseball team to win a Korean Series title in 5 different decades: the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, and now 2020s. While the Kia Tigers boast some of the best power hitters in the league, it wasn't the power hitters that helped them to victory. The 165-centimeter infielder Kim Sun-bin was named the Korean Series MVP after going 10 for 17 in the 5 games. He beat his teammate Kim Tae-gun 46-45 in media voting. While the Kia Tigers' 2024 season started off with their manager Kim Jong-guk getting fired over a bribery allegation, Lee Bum-ho, a Kia Tigers legend himself, took over the managerial role. The Kia Tigers cruised through the regular season, finishing first in the regular season and getting a direct bye to this Korean Series. And with no back-to-back Korean Series winners since the 2015-2016 Doosan Bears, the Tigers look to change that next season and defend their title. But for now, it's celebration time for the 12-time champions. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and this is The World Now. We begin today in Israel, where the country's parliament voted to pass a legislation banning the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or the UNRWA, from operating in Israel and Israeli-occupied territories. The move will further limit the aid operation on the war-torn Gaza Strip, while contact between Israeli officials and UNRWA staff members will also be banned. That includes the UN agency's cooperation with the Israeli military, which controls all entry into Gaza. UNRWA headquarters in East Jerusalem will be shut down, with the aid agency's staff stripped of their legal diplomatic immunity. Now, while the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy called the action totally wrong, foreign ministers from Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Japan and South Korea issued statements to express grave concern prior to the passing of the legislation. UNRWA Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini said the measure would deepen the suffering of Palestinians who depend on aid from the agency. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused some UNRWA staff of working with Hamas in Gaza, claiming that 19 took part in the Hamas attack on October 7th last year. Now, the UNRWA, which employs tens of thousands of workers, in August said it had fired 9 of its staff that may have been involved in the attack. The UN's weather monitoring agency, the World Meteorological Organization, says carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are accumulating faster than any time experienced during human existence. According to Monday's press release by the organization, greenhouse gas levels surged to a new record last year, with carbon dioxide concentrations increasing 11.4% in just the past 2 decades. The WMO's annual greenhouse gas bulletin stated that CO2 concentrations hit a record high of 420 parts per million in 2023, increasing by 2.3 parts per million from 2022. It added that the current level of CO2 is 51% higher than pre-industrial times before 1750. Now, the WMO Secretary General, Celeste Saulo, said that this should set alarm bells ringing among decision makers. Just a week ahead of the US presidential election, ballot drop boxes in 2 American cities were set on fire on Monday morning, which authorities are treating as connected incidents of arson. According to Portland police, an identical car was seen at both scenes, and a similar incendiary device was used in both incidents, which took place in Portland, Oregon, and the nearby city of Vancouver in Washington state. Local officials said that 3 ballots were damaged in Portland, while hundreds may have been damaged in Vancouver. American actor Timothée Chalamet surprised fans on Sunday as he appeared at his own look-alike contest in New York City. Now, the event, which had a $50 prize for the winner, was hosted by a YouTube personality at Washington Square Park in Lower Manhattan. The actor greeted his lookalikes, who were dressed as characters played by Chalamet. Police ordered the group of fans to disperse, which led to 1 arrest, while a $500 fine was issued to the organizers for holding a costume contest without a permit.
It's another great start to the day for the capital, and Jeju is forecast to see 20 millimeters of rain through lunchtime, with strong winds also expected for the Jeju and the south coast today. Temperatures, however, stay warmer than average, and morning lows and afternoon highs remain 5 to 7 degrees higher than norms through the end of October. Enjoy the pleasant autumn weather while you can. The skies will also get brighter tomorrow. Checking on today's highs now, Seoul gets up to 18 degrees Celsius. Daejeon, Daegu, Gwangju, Gyeongju will all get up to 20 degrees Celsius. Air quality will be decent nationwide all day today. Now, we won't complain much in terms of weather through Sunday, but there will be a big drop in temperatures next week as we head into late autumn. Meanwhile, Typhoon Kongray is expected to turn into a tropical storm on Saturday in the East China Sea, and it's unlikely to have an impact on the Korean peninsula. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.